We have a duty to fight for our freedom.
We have a duty to fight for our freedom.
We have a duty to win.
We have a duty to win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must love and protect one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have a duty to fight for our freedom.
We have a duty to fight for our freedom.
We have a duty to win.
We have a duty to win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must love and protect one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
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 Welcome to Fight Back Radio, a production of fightbacknews.org, taking you to the heart of the people's struggle. I'm your host, Richard Berg, and today we're going to be talking about a conference that just happened for the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And many of our listeners I know have heard me promoting this conference for some time now, and it just happened this past weekend. In fact, we're releasing this a day or so late because our editors and myself, we were all at the conference, engaged with the conference, and we're fired up about it. It was just so much happened. It was hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the country, great organizers, and so today we have with us the treasurer, newly elected treasurer, I think re-elected, for the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, Monique Sampson. And Monique is also a teacher, a union activist. She's a union steward for the Duval Teachers United. She lives in Jacksonville, Florida, where she is also the treasurer of the local Jacksonville Community Action Committee, which is affiliated with the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And she's been a guest of ours before. I'd encourage you to, if you like this interview, and I know you will, to go back and check that one out. She's also a mother, a TikTok rock star, one of the very widely watched TikTok star, and probably much more I'm probably forgetting. But welcome to Fight Back Radio, Monique.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so blessed and honored to be here. Oh,
it's great to have you, of course. For those of our listeners, though, who don't know what the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression is, I know, it's often said that, and many of our listeners may know this, it has its roots in the committees to free Angela Davis and all political prisoners, and it came out of that. But could you talk a little bit about, it's so much more than that. What the national, and that's, Angela Davis's campaign was historic and important, so I don't mean to belittle that in any way. But can you talk a little bit about, what the National Alliance is and what it was then and what it is now?
Absolutely. So the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression has been and will always be a Black-led mass defense organization where we are essentially fighting against police crimes, fighting against state-sanctioned terror, fighting with the families of victims of police violence and people that have been affected by state-sanctioned terror. We've essentially launched campaigns across the country in different chapters and affiliates, national days of action where we are demanding, for example, justice for George Floyd, where we are demanding to free all political prisoners, so on and so forth. So that's a little bit about the National Alliance, or NAARPR as we so affectionately call it. It is a Black-led mass defense group that is fighting for freedom and liberation for all people.
Well, I'll say this, it inspired the heck out of me. It was this conference that just occurred. It was at my union hall, the Chicago Teachers Union Hall. So I was especially proud. My chest was out to hear or whatever. And I was walking around probably a foot taller all weekend.
Yeah.
But yes. But I wanted to ask you about one of the common themes all weekend, and this has been in the movement, not just the Alliance, is that we need to fight Trump. We need to have a broad front against Trump. People talk about that. For the Alliance, what does that actually mean, and what does that look like on the ground, having a broad front against Trump?
Absolutely. So Frank Chapman always says it best. We are going to have unity and action. We are going to talk about the things and how we work well together, but we're going to be about it most of all. We're going to be about that action. And it's extremely important. One of the resolutions that we passed at the conference was a presidential memorandum that was passed by the Trump administration, where it's essentially criminalized the people's movements. Everything they listed, from extreme views on migration and race to anti Americanism to a rejection of traditional family values and more, is essentially criminalized. The Trump administration is directing a national task force to surveil our movements, to squash dissent within all of our movements. So, because he's attacking so many people like the fool that he is, it's now more important now than ever. As Frank said, we are living in an unprecedented time, times that he has not even seen, even though he grew up in the Jim Crow South. We are living in unprecedented times, and unprecedented times call for a broad front against Trump if we want to win. Since he's attacking so many of us anyway, we have that commonality and we have to have unity in action.
Okay. Do you see this as being it is unique times for sure. I mean,
Yes.
what's happening with Trump every week there's something in the headlines or it's oh my God, it's like things that would happen, maybe once a year are happening, two, three times a day sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but I wanted to ask you about, so this broad front against Trump, is that different than how we approached Joe Biden, for example?
Absolutely, it's different than how we approach Joe Biden. I know at the last NAARPR conference, our Palestinian brothers and sisters, they were talking to us about the righteous rebellions that were currently happening in the reinvigoration of the Palestine liberation movement. And now, under Trump, we see not only the Palestine liberation movement being attacked, we see immigrants being attacked, the Black liberation movement being attacked, the Chicano liberation movement being attacked. So we're seeing so many more movements, revolutionary movements, being attacked and trying to be squashed by this administration. So the unite and fight against the Trump agenda is different than what we were doing under Biden.
Okay. So could you bring that down a little bit? So like in
Yeah.
Jacksonville, for example, where you live,
Yeah.
how does your local chapter, how do you implement this United Front Against Trump? Are there people that you're working with that you didn't work with before? And is does everybody see this? I mean, there's in the movement there's groups that are get along real well with each other and some that
Yeah.
we always have a little trouble with that group,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and so what does that look like in Jacksonville, and is that typical?
Yeah, so Jacksonville has had a rich history of trying to work with or working well with, honestly, other groups. Now, we do have some groups that are brand new after this newest Trump term, right? Like 5051, for example. This is a brand new group that emerged out of this next or this Trump presidency. They just got here. So, one of the things that we did as the Jacksonville Community Action Committee was to reach out to them. They started coming to our meetings as well. So, that was very easy, talking with them, seeing how we can get involved, seeing how we can help. And honestly, the unity and action principles is something that we follow. There's some groups where we may not agree with everything, but if we agree in our unity and action to stop and defeat Trump, we're on the way. So anytime the Jacksonville Community Action Committee can join an action, sponsor an action, plan our own action, and have people come and speak, we will do that. We unite and fight with anybody that has unity and action.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Let me ask you a little bit about because I was at the convention and I saw, it was incredibly diverse, so there
Yeah.
was lots of black people there, but also lots
Yeah.
of Latinos,
Mhm.
Arabs, white people, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. I started naming a list.
Yeah.
Everybody was there.
Mhm,
Whoever
for
you
sure.
are, your
Yeah.
people were there. And
Yeah.
so my question though is that you said earlier that this is a black-led organization. That's conscious. It's not just by chance it's a black-led organization. They set
Mhm.
out to be a black-led organization. And so why why do so many Latinos or Asians, other oppressed nationalities show up at the alliance? And how does that work? I mean, does in terms of is there tension because of that, or how does that actually play out in practice?
Absolutely. So it plays out beautifully in practice because the National Alliance, being that it is a mass defense organization, it means that we are ready to fight when it comes to anything. In the same way that our Palestinian brothers and sisters, our Latino brothers and sisters, and more fought with us during the 2020 righteous rebellion, the righteous George Floyd rebellion, they marched out in the streets with us. They helped us with bail support. They made sure that our folks were safe. We are doing the same because we understand that our unity in action, okay, action, like Frank said, we are about that action. It is going to bring the belly of the beast, this country, to its knees. So if we go off and we do our own things, then of course we're going to be so fractured, but we understand that we are stronger together. And the same way with the reinvigoration of the Palestine liberation movement, the Alliance put out resolutions, the Alliance participated in national calls to action. And now the same way with Trump's horrible mass deportation policies that are essentially kidnapping so many of our Latino neighbors off of the streets. We are in the streets. We are calling for protests. We are essentially putting out resolutions. We're putting out statements. We're working with Legalization for All, who's one of our affiliates, to see how we can help because we want to make sure that we're working lockstep together. And there's no tension because we understand that we have unity in action and we understand that none of us are free until all of us are free. And that is the most important part. And our struggles being stronger, the Palestine liberation struggle being stronger, the Legalizations for All's struggle being stronger, an Akbayan struggle being strong, essentially helps all of the movements as well.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I want to mention you've mentioned Frank Chapman twice now already, and
Yeah.
and he's the executive director. I think that's the correct title. Just
Yes.
reelected
Mhm.
by the conference of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and
Mhm.
he's been a guest on Fight Back Radio as well.
Yeah.
So I also encourage people to. He's written a couple of books to read his
Mhm.
books and to go back and listen to what he had to say. But yeah, thank you for bringing up Frank. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to go back to this idea of so you're a black-led organization. I'm thinking of like here in Chicago last winter.
Mhm.
Governor Abbott from Texas was
Mhm.
sending up lots of immigrants, mostly Venezuelan, but other countries as well, from Texas to Chicago in the dead of winter. And our mayor, courageously, came forward with our support and um, was said, okay, well, we need to find these people shelter and food and jobs, whatever, and
Mhm.
but there was tension, within, especially with the black community, and I think it was geared towards that to say, because there's so many problems that exist from decades or centuries, not decades of poverty, and the way the black community's been was been treated. And so when you call for a broad front or to go out and to fight against ICE raids and stuff like that, my question is, do you get pushback from the black community that says, hey, why don't you take care of us? We got lots of problems here. What are you out there doing that for? And that sort of thing. How do you deal
Yeah.
with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've been black my whole life, believe it or not. I've lived in the Black Belt South most of my life. And this is something that I've maybe heard a handful of times, right? Because most black people within our actual consciousness, knowing our consciousness, we understand that immigrants are not the reason we can't put food on the table. Immigrants are not the reason that we're living under oppression, repression. Immigrants are not the reason that the police are brutalizing us and then getting paid leave, okay? They're not the reason for that. Immigrants are not the reason we can't afford healthcare. Immigrants are not the reason that we just can't afford to live at all. The ruling class is that reason. And because of that level of consciousness, like I said, I've only had this conversation maybe one, two, maybe three times. And these are people that want a piece of something for themselves. These are not, in my opinion, very serious people because most of the conversations that I have are like, so these people getting housing and getting food, that's not the reason that we're living under oppression. That's not the reason why our communities are constantly being surveilled. Our communities are constantly being harassed by the police. That's not the reason. The ruling class is the reason because they put those conditions onto us. And if I punch down at my neighbor, that's really letting the guy up top that's essentially screwing us all over walk off scot free. And that's exactly what he wants us to do. So our level of consciousness is honestly evolving, especially as a people. We understand, like I said, it's not Venezuelans' fault that we are living in this country, in this white supremacist country. It's not their fault at all whatsoever. So if somebody is coming here and they need food, housing, medical care, get them that food, housing, and medical care, because denying them that food, housing, and medical care is not going to make the conditions of my life any better.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think Trump has actually helped us in this sense, to be honest with you. I mean,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
attacked so many people so recklessly and so widely. There was, I mean, at the conference, this was brought up several times that in Chicago there was a large apartment building on the south side where it was there was Latinos and blacks that lived there, but they just went in and grabbed everybody, and they
Mhm.
were putting zip tie handcuffs on little children and taking you know elderly retired women in their bathrobes off to a detention center, and large number, they didn't care if you were black or Latino, whether you had papers or
Mhm.
not. They were just scooping everybody up.
Yep.
And that, I think that incident, but in many incidents like that, have brought people together to say, hey, look, we need to deal with a common enemy here.
Absolutely. And honestly, too, like the imagery of Haitian immigrants being whipped by ICE or Border Patrol while they were sitting on horses. Immigration is also a Black issue as well. So, we could put our hands in the sand, heads in the sand, and punch down all we want to, but it's Latinos today is us tomorrow. So punching down is not going to help anything. And our level of consciousness, at least the in person conversations that I have, everybody knows this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me. This is on the same vein, but at the conference there was a large number of Arab leaders that were there, and particularly Palestinians, and there was chants from the stage about Palestine, and
Mm.
Palestine was very present at this conference, and the last one even more so, I think, because it
Yeah.
was before the agreement had been reached with the Israelis, and so. But there, similarly though, I think, people would ask, why does the National Alliance care about foreign policy, and how does Palestine fit into a foreign policy for Black people or for other people in the United States, and why aren't we just, focused locally? Why does this matter to us?
Absolutely. Because what's happening in Palestine will happen here. The weapons that are sent over to Palestine are funded by US tax dollars and the US ruling class. Palestine during the Ferguson Rebellion, Palestine during the Righteous Rebellion of 2020, Palestinians living in Gaza were sending over tips on how we can essentially get this tear gas on our eyes that was being deployed using the same tactics that Israel, the IOF, deploys over in Palestine. Our police go over and train there. In Jacksonville, we have a horrible sheriff, TK Waters, that thanked and said it was wonderful the tactics that the IOF was able to use, maiming, okay, brutalizing Palestinians, and wishing that he could do that there. So our police that brutalize Black people, okay, that kill Black people, that torture Black people, are going over to Israel and learning those tactics and coming back here and doing it. So we can say, oh, well, this is just a foreign issue that's happening thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away. But that foreign issue, quote unquote, that's happening thousands and thousands of miles away are culminating real consequences here in the United States. So if we just don't care about it, it's going to happen to us anyway. And then also the Palestine Liberation Movement, there is a great debt that I remember in 2020. There being delegations of Palestinians marching here in the United States. In Jacksonville, we had delegations of Palestinians that said, we're going to this event at this time. We're marching at this time. We had Sarah Mahmoud, who is now the leader of the Jacksonville Palestine Solidarity Network, staying up with me and other people 48 hours straight to get people out of jail during the Black Liberation Movement. So Palestinians stood with us for the entirety history of our relationship, and we're going to continue standing with them. It's for us at the National Alliance, it really is that simple. We work well together. We understand that our struggles are united, and we can't just ignore the Palestinian liberation struggle because none of us are free until we're all free. So because we have that unity in action, our relationship works very well together. We don't look at it as a foreign thing. We look at it as something that is actively coming here to the United States.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
None of us are free until we're all free. That's well
Yeah.
said. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that really capsulizes it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about what I think is a cornerstone issue of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and the chapter here in Chicago, and my sense is all of them, or at least
Yeah.
most of them, and that's this issue of community control of the police.
Yeah.
Because there's many issues that affect affect oppressed people, affect Black people, affect workers. But that's something that the Alliance tends to focus on strongly, maybe more so than many other issues. And my question, I guess, is why do you choose that above other issues and not to belittle other issues, but that's
Of
something that
course.
you say, okay, this is something that we do across the country. Why is that? And what's your view on maybe you could talk a little bit about how you attack that issue as well.
Absolutely. So, community control of the police, for folks that do not know, this is a democratic method that gives the community control over the police. Okay, we have hiring and firing powers, subpoena powers, and more. We have seen in history when the police have to represent themselves and look for wrongdoing and investigate themselves. When the police have to investigate themselves, there's no wrongdoing. So, the community is left to bear the brunt of that brutality while cops go and protect each other. So, community control of the police essentially gives the community control of the people that are policing them, because these killer cops are they are out of control. There's a chant that's like, when killer cops are on patrol, what do we want? Community control. There's another chant that's like, when killer cops are out of control, what do we want? Community control, because they truly are out of control. If these people have the ability to come in our neighborhoods, harass us, shoot us, brutalize us, the people should have a say. There should be a democratic process to hold these killer cops accountable. And for us, it's that simple. Now, the Alliance focuses on this issue, and I don't know if you saw the families plenary. There were 25 at least families that talked about their experience with police brutality. Everything from being shot point blank in the head, everything from being rammed by a police cruiser into a Burger King, and then another one where someone was shot while running away. And a common thread in the stories that these families were telling was that they were never able to get justice, and that these cops are still on patrol to this day while they're dealing with the depression and suicidal ideations and frustration of not getting justice for their loved one. So community control directly deals with that issue. Community control gives the community teeth, fists to fight back against these policing practices that leave families feeling horrible, that leave families feeling depressed and suicidal and hopeless because they're not able to get justice for their loved ones. Community control is a method of achieving justice and liberation for people that are affected by racist policing practices here in the United States.
Yeah. So why is this then? No, I mean there's the Alliance, and I was at the convention. It was like this was you're right. I saw the victims, and it makes you cry. It really literally. And but it's usually it's portrayed as whatever, whether it's Trayvon Martin. You can go through all the names. There's like
Yeah.
so many of them. And it's like, oh, well, it's just one bad cop, or that, sometimes they name the cop's name, or he gets caught, sometimes not. But it seems like this is, especially since we all got cell phones now and people started taking videos, you see so much more of it. But
Yeah.
it's like it's everywhere. And so
Yeah.
why is it why does, it seems like, it's a job, people apply for it, whatever. Why does this job attract so many bad people, or why do good people turn bad? Why is it like that?
Because people turn bad when they become cops, because it is a systemic issue and because there is no community control over the police. If police officers knew that if they harmed, brutalized people, that they would be held to account for it, perhaps they wouldn't be doing it. We've seen cases where it has been on camera. There were families talking about these incidents were on camera, whether it was body worn footage, whether it was a cell phone camera, and these cops still got away with it. That's the problem, is like, yes, we're seeing it all over the place, but what we're not seeing is the justice that should come when you shoot someone and you brutalize someone and you leave children without a father, you leave a mom without a son. You know what I mean? So this is just a prevalent issue because cops feel they can do anything they want to do because they're not going to be held accountable. On a federal level, they have qualified immunity. Like, who can work a job and beat the crap out of someone or shoot someone and say they did it because they were fearful of their life? Who can work a job where they can ram somebody with their vehicle and kill them, ramming them into a Burger King, and get qualified immunity for it? It's insane. No other job is like this. And that's why we need to hold these cops accountable, and community control is a way to do it.
Yeah, no. Can you talk yes, I mean, it's my gosh. Can you talk a little bit about the campaigns across the country? And is it, are you seeing, are there, are we getting mostly big victories, or is it hard going here, or is it uneven, or what are the kinds of things people are, that this campaign is, because it's been going for a minute now, and
Yeah.
you guys aren't backing off. I see that. I mean,
Yeah.
any of our Fight Back Radio listeners that are interested in community control of the police, the National Alliance or your local chapters where you should go, and even before, the Alliance. Was mentioned at the conference. I mean, the Black Panther Party was doing this before that, and probably other groups even before that. Um, but what's been the result, and what kinds of obstacles are you running into, and how you dealing with them? Could you speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely. So there are multiple different campaigns across the country, right? Like in Chicago, Chicago had a very successful campaign to start implementing steps of community control, having these commissioners that are able to have hire and fire powers, and kind of being a blueprint for the entire country, right? You have places in Atlanta that are fighting to free people that were brutalized during protests. You have Jacksonville, where we had students that were essentially going out and doing encampment work, where we were able to, as the Alliance put out a statement in support. And all over the country, honestly, those students, a lot of those charges were dropped. Shout out to National SDS as well, who is an affiliate of the National Alliance too. In Jacksonville, we are fighting against a $1 billion jail. They want to build a $1 billion jail. Okay, give developers all these money to cage all of these people without doing any sort of methods to, one, depopulate the jail here. Right. There was a case where we had a killer cop. His name was Josue Garriga. One of the families that were brutalized by him was actually at the National Alliance conference, and we were able to essentially get some of the major charges dropped. Okay, fighting for justice for him as well. We're connecting with a lot of families, and that's also a constant theme across the entire country, is the connection that we are making with these families in order to get justice. And it's quite interesting too, because freedom is a constant struggle, right? We have big victories and then we have some minor setbacks, like in Florida, where they made allegedly civilian review boards illegal. The mayor can still institute them with an executive order, but they made them illegal. And I put it in quotes because technically it's not illegal. So we have things like that. We have the National Guard in DC. We have people that are fighting back against these things. That's the thing. So when all these things are happening across the country and it seems like setbacks, the National Alliance has affiliates and chapters that have strong fighters in them that are fighting back against this terror and these horrible things that are constantly happening.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask back again, circle back a little bit here, because you talked about the families who are of the victims of the police crimes and police terror. And at the conference, maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about what happened at the conference. There was there was a whole section set aside for families to talk.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit, maybe some of the stories and how that went, and recount that for our Fight Back Radio listeners, and tell us why the families are important to the work that you do.
Absolutely. The families and the families and survivors of police violence and state sanctioned violence are the lifeblood of our work. They are the reason many times that we are doing this actual work, especially a lot of our board is personally affected by either police violence within their families, state sanctioned violence within their families. My grandfather died in prison a year before he was set to be released of a treatable medical condition of negligence, essentially. So we have these families that come every single conference to the National Alliance. And this year we had about 25, maybe 30 sharing their stories. And like I said, it was everything from being shot while running away to being rammed with a vehicle. And these families are actively fighting for justice. And they do look at the National Alliance chapters and affiliates to help them with that fight, right? We had the family of Walter Scott, who was a man in South Carolina who was shot as he was running away, and the officer lied about it. And the family kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting. The perpetrator, the police officer, he's in prison for 20 years, but the family's still dealing with the depression and the frustration of it, right? You had other families, like a family in Atlanta. A deacon was shot and killed by a 23-year-old police officer over a traffic. It was he got into an accident and he called the police to help. And instead of helping, the police killed him, and that family is still fighting for justice. You had another family who was talking about two victims. This family was from Atlanta. They had two victims of police violence in their family, which is horrible. And they were talking about the fight for justice and how we need to unite and continue fighting. And that was honestly, Richard, that was the biggest theme. And all the families were saying, we need to keep fighting. We need to keep fighting. We need to keep fighting. Yes, we feel hopeless sometimes. Yes, we feel depressed. But being at this conference reinvigorated us to continue fighting. So the National Alliance, and we even passed a resolution about this, we will work with families that are affected by police violence. We will work with families that are affected by state-sanctioned violence, families of political prisoners, because that is the lifeblood of our work and organization.
Yeah. It seems, yeah, I mean, families, let me ask you this. I mean, it's not always readily apparent, who in the family wants to work with you or not. My God, I mean, when something happens, the emotional trauma is severe. And so people go through all kinds of, whatever, depressions, sadness, anger, all kinds of things, then back and forth again, I would think. And so how do you as an organization, how do you deal with the families? Yeah, you have to deal with them differently, I would think, than any of the other members or activists that you have. And how do you do that? How do you approach them and show respect for what they're going through and help them nurture their way into a good space?
Absolutely. So with the families, a lot of the time, they're wanting someone to listen to them. They're wanting to know that they're not alone. They're wanting to know that there are people that are willing to fight with them because they have gone through a process, especially by the time they come to the National Alliance chapters. There are times where they've gone through a process where they're listening to a state attorney and listening to the police tell them why it was their fault that their loved one was brutalized, why it was their fault that their loved one was shot by the police, right? And so when they come to us, there's no judgment. There's nothing that they have to explain. They tell us, my loved one was brutalized. My loved one was murdered by the police. Can you help us? And we say yes. And hearing that yes helps them understand we're here to fight with you. We're not here to fight you. We're not here to make you justify why your family member deserved to live, why your family member deserved to live a long life. We're here to help you get justice. And I think a lot of the times that really does help the families trust us, then that there is a deep amount of trust. And other places across the entire country, there are National Alliance chapters and affiliates that offer free therapy services for families that help fundraise for families, because a lot of the times there are children that are left behind because their parents were murdered by the police. So there are affiliates and chapters that do fundraising for those families and those children that are affected by police violence. There are chapters and affiliates that essentially pay for therapy services for these families as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then how do you connect the dots then between a family who's going through all of this
Mhm.
and then a more broader demand like community control of the police and that we need to sometimes it's community control, just the idea is just stopping me for traffic or harassing me on the way to school or what, something can be something more minor, whereas these families you talk about are seeing something much more major and
Yes.
are going through so much more than that. And so how do you connect the dots on those kinds of things?
Absolutely. So, community control of the police is so easy to explain to families of affected, or excuse me, community control of the police is so easy to explain to families that are looking for justice because community control of the police is the answer for someone that is looking for justice because it helps us hold cops accountable. Families just want justice. They just want the person, like with any other job or any other person, they just want the person that murdered and brutalized their loved one to be held accountable. They would also love their loved one back, but justice and accountability is the step that they want. So seeing and phrasing and telling them community control is going to help us get justice because that's what it is. It really does help the families kind of put two and two together. They're like, the reason that my loved one has not gotten justice, the reason that this officer is still walking the streets about to do this to another person is because the community does not have a say in what happens to the police. And it's because the police are not being held accountable. Okay. So the solution to that is community control. So they put two and two together and it becomes a beautiful symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That
Mhm.
makes sense. I want to go back to this notion of a broad front against Trump and trying to unite, large numbers of people into, and you called for it about action. But I noticed at the conference struck me as being very radical, very left, and
Yeah.
like my friend Monique. But and so how do you reconcile that with like we need to have a broad front, but it was
Yeah.
over if I looked at who was there or at least who was speaking and the people I ran into for the most part, it seemed to be more of a radical activist group.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel that it was like half and half, honestly, especially with the people that came. There were people that came that had never been to a conference before. This was their first activist event. They were just random community members. We had a lot of families that came too that don't consider themselves left or right. They just see themselves in the fight for justice, and that's where that unity in action comes in at. We're building this united front, and it seems super duper radical, and it seems super duper left, but all we're fighting for is justice and liberation. So if that makes it a left conference, then it is what it is, at that point. But with the united front, we are willing to work with those who are willing to work with us, and that's what we're going to continue doing.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you also about though about whatever the politicians. I mean, so
Mhm.
there's a okay, so the conference, opening night of the conference Friday had
Yeah.
several politicians speak at it. There was, and I'm from Chicago, so I knew him, so
Yeah.
Brandon Johnson is the mayor of Chicago. He used to, and he comes out of our movement. He used to work for the Chicago Teachers Union. He's actually a friend of mine. He's been on Fight Back
Yeah.
Radio.
Very
Um,
cool.
yeah, it is cool. So,
Yeah.
we'll elect you mayor next.
Mhm.
But but yeah, so Brandon spoke, and there was a couple of aldermen, Byron Sigcho Lopez, and I think there was another alderman or a couple other aldermen that spoke. And so, so yeah, there was, on opening night there was a number of elected officials, but then, throughout the conference, um, there was a lot of elected officials, and I'm not talking about Donald Trump, who's
Yeah.
off the chain to the right, and but people in the Democratic Party,
Hmm.
like the mayor of Washington D.C., whose name escapes me right now, but
Bowser.
Bowser, thank you,
Yeah.
was called out several times for cooperating with Trump in the what's going on in Washington. And then there is the far right, like in your state in Florida, DeSantis and
Hmm.
some of the politicians there. So there seems to be this geographic diversity in how in electoral politics. And I mean, there's precious few movement politicians, but we have a few of them, thankfully, here. Not enough in Chicago. But it's how do you, should we be looking to an electoral strategy, or how should that fit in? Or, it's is this are there tendencies within the Democratic Party that we should are part of this front that we're talking about? You mentioned 5051 and
Yeah.
Indivisible and some of these groups that are having, national, have the resources to have national make a national call. How do you view that kind of Bowser, Brandon Johnson kind of dichotomy?
Right. So again, National Alliance, we are building a broad, united front. And there are times where there are politicians that want to fight, like Brandon Johnson, politicians like Zohran Mamdani out of New York City that
Mhm.
want to fight to make people's lives better. And we're going to work with them. We are going to have unity in action. You want to fight to make working class people's lives better. You want to fight for justice in this world. You want to call out this racist white supremacist system. Absolutely will work with you. And the fact of the matter is this Trump administration is targeting politicians. He's there's representative I think her name is Monica McIver. I'm failing on her name. There's this representative that is up north. She's currently being charged because she went to an ICE facility and demanded that she be let in. There have been a lot of representatives and a lot of politicians that have been arrested, that have been attacked by the Trump administration. There was a time where Trump was threatening to go in and arrest Brandon Johnson, okay, because Brandon Johnson was like, we do not want the National Guard in Chicago, get out of here. So these politicians are also being attacked, and that's the chaos and the nonsense of the Trump administration is they're attacking so many people on so many different fronts. That's why we call it a broad united front. We are under no delusion that the Democratic Party will save us. We understand though that there are certain tendencies within the Democrat Party where we are going to unite and fight because those tendencies and those people like Brandon Johnson, like Zohran Mamdani, are being threatened with arrest, are being threatened with jail because they are wanting to at least fight to make people's lives better.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let me go back to the ones that we're not uniting with.
Yeah.
So like Bowser in
Mhm.
DC, and then let me compare them to, some of the really bad ones that like
Yeah.
maybe DeSantis, and in your state. And so, is the approach different? From I mean, from how you deal with those two different types of antis, or people that are more, that are part of the problem, part of the oppression, or how, do you see division within their ranks, or how, what's the difference between Florida and Washington, D.C.?
Absolutely. So the difference between Florida and Washington, D.C., Ron DeSantis, he is going to Ron DeSantis is going to be Ron DeSantis. He's going to have horrible policies. He's going to be on the far right. He's going to oppress people, right? Mayor Bowser puts up a front like she's for the people, like she's a fighter, but then she capitulates to the DeSantises and the Trumps of the world. She's a traitor. And essentially, Washington, D.C., they had a really, really good chant. It was like, fight like Brandon, fight like Zoran, not like Bowser. She's a moron because Bowser capitulated to the Trump administration to save her own behind. So of course we're not working with the capitulators because they're already capitulating. They're not working hard to fight. They're not working hard to fight against this administration at all. So we don't have unity in action there. We have someone that is working to save their own behinds, and we can't work with snakes. We can only work with people who essentially have unity in action.
No, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah.
Let me okay, we've talked a lot about national oppression and racism, or or fights, against that. But I
Mhm.
wanted to specifically call out also the LGBTQ community,
Yeah.
who was at the conference in huge numbers,
Hmm.
and in the oppression they faced under Trump. And this is something, maybe oppression of Black people's been a long time, but there's been like in LGBTQ as well. But there's
Yeah.
been a flip. I mean, they were making progress. It looked like to me, anyways, for a long time,
Mhm.
and suddenly, Trump gets in, and they're the tip of the spear, as they say. Could you talk a little bit about LGBTQ activism, and particularly within the alliance, and the role that the LGBTQ community has played within the National Alliance?
Absolutely. So the LGBTQ community, again, it's part of the Black community as well, right? There are Black folks that are LGBTQ. Even on our board, there are people that are LGBTQ, right? So we understand that these struggles are intersectional, and these struggles, they coincide with each other quite a bit, right? So we're seeing the attacks on the LGBTQ community. We're seeing the attacks on transgender people. We're seeing the attacks on something that I thought was settled, marriage equality, right? On a regular basis. And these attacks are being done by the Trump administration. Again, the chaos of this man to attack all these people. So the National Alliance, part of building a united, broad front against the Trump administration, is also working with LGBTQ people who are being oppressed, okay, and being threatened. Their very existence is being threatened by this administration.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, Monique, you also I want to, you mentioned or I mentioned when I introduced you at the top of the show that you're a union steward
Yeah.
in the Duval Teachers United,
Mhm.
and Frank Chapman, who lives here in Chicago, so I'm fortunate to see him now and again, and
Yeah.
he says that the big victory in Chicago, the passage of the Empowering Communities for Public Safety ordinance that gave the right to elect these district council members and to
Mhm.
create this board and give some power, some measure of power, not enough yet, back to
Yeah.
the community. Frank says that would have never happened without the support of organized labor.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit about how does organized labor relate to the alliance, and what's the role? How do you see the role of labor in the fight that you're trying to do, not just for community control of the police, but all the battles that you have?
Absolutely. Organized labor is extremely important. And even under this administration, we have seen attacks on organized labor. And the South, specifically in Florida, we've seen attacks on organized labor for the last couple of years under Governor DeSantis, right? Organized labor is extremely important because you have a wide variety of people in the workplace that are being oppressed, okay, that are being essentially taken advantage of by their job, and they're working and have horrible working conditions. When organized labor combines and works with the National Alliance, beautiful and wonderful things can happen. There are so many union members, right, that have good contracts because we fought for them, right? Because we fought blood, sweat, and tears. And imagine if organized labor and the National Alliance, which we do, work together and have unity in action. Again, organized labor is being attacked as well by the Trump administration, and the National Alliance, part of building that united front and against the Trump administration, is also working with organized labor who's being openly attacked by them as well.
Yeah. Well, let me ask. I want to take maybe a little bit of a tangent on this, but it's the issue of class. I mean, I go to the National Alliance conference or even the Chicago Alliance meetings and programs,
Mhm.
and they're overwhelmingly working class
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
It's stunning because like if you go to most and I've been to a number of conferences in my life for like civil rights or whatever, and that's not the case most of the time. And it's not just civil rights, any kind of progressive cause. It's you get a large number of people from academia or the not-for-profit world or middle class people who have the time and the money to be able to do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And that's not true with the alliance. It's
Yeah.
really striking that and you can tell you walk in, it's a different vibe, a different color, everything.
Yeah.
It's just completely different. Um, why is the alliance unique in that way? And in what do you attribute that to? But also, is that a good thing? Or, I mean, probably you could use more money. I know the treasurer would say so, right? But
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
how do you see this?
Working class people are affected by working class issues, national oppression, not having access to health care, not having access to housing or food. The stuff that we talk about at the National Alliance, police violence, police brutality, a lot of the families that were affected are regular working class people. The National Alliance is not a group of academics and nonprofit folks. The National Alliance is a group of working class people who are directly impacted by issues of oppression, by issues of racist policing, by issues of systemic violence. So the people that are affected and have families members that are affected are essentially coming to a conference together, and it just works out that way. I wish there was like a special formula, right, where I could say we do this and we do this and we do this, but the reality of it is that the board is working class. The people planning the conferences are working class. One of the main conference organizers works in like a library system. You know what I mean? So because we are doing it because we are doing this because a lot of us are affected by these issues that often impact the working class, right? And no, we aren't nonprofiters, we aren't academics. We I always joke, I'm like, I don't know how we all make the time to do this on top of our regular 9 to 5 jobs, but we do. And it is a really rewarding thing, but it is something that just works out because a lot of the things that we fight against and a lot of the things that we mobilize against are working class issues, are issues because the ruling class essentially oppresses us and makes these issues in our lives. So yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I mean, I think there's something special in the sauce, I think there, because it's unique.
Yeah.
I notice that it's unique, and maybe it's because of the special leadership
Mhm.
that the alliance has, and but it's impressive, and it makes a difference.
Yeah.
People on the street recognize it too. I know, like
Yeah.
when I see the things in the Chicago Alliance and what they do.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you also about the broader Black liberation movement. So the
Mhm.
alliance is a part of this, but it's big. It's bigger than just the alliance,
Yeah.
and it's there's Black people fighting for freedom across the United States. In the South, in the North, everywhere.
Yeah.
And how do you, could you give a little bit of an assessment of where you think the Black liberation movement is right now as a
Mhm.
whole, and then also how you think how the alliance fits into that, and what your niche is, or what how you see what you're trying to do in relation to that.
Yeah, the National Alliance is one of the leading forces in the Black liberation movement, specifically because we focus on issues that affect Black people. We always talk about the South, the South, the South. Malcolm X has a quote that's like, if you are, below the Canadian border, you're in the South, right? You experience oppression and you experience just horrible systemic failures and white supremacy in this country. So the National Alliance across different chapters all over America, our chapters in the South, our chapters in the North, our chapters in the Midwest, our chapters everywhere are fighting for issues that affect Black people. And a lot of our chapters and affiliates are Black led chapters and affiliates, right? You even have the West Coast, our legalization for all folks that are mostly Latino, right? They also help fight for Black issues. They fight for Black immigrants that are being affected by mass deportations, right? They mobilize, even in resolutions that we passed at the conference from legalization for all, they mention that, right? Immigrants that are being affected, including Haitian immigrants, including other Caribbean immigrants as well. So, I mean, part of the National Alliance structure and strategy is we are a leading force in the Black liberation movement because we focus on things that affect Black people. And a lot of our board, we have family members that have been affected by police violence, police torture, and systemic violence as well. So that's just kind of what we do.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you next about I said at the top of the show that you're a teacher and
Yeah.
a union activist in the teachers union. And one of the resolutions that came, and our Fight Back Radio listeners know that I'm a member of the Chicago Teachers Union and was involved with the charter school division of that union. But
Mhm.
one of the resolutions that came up talked about charter schools and about privatization of public
Yeah.
education, and it spoke out against charter schools and the expansion of privatizing charter schools,
Mhm.
privatizing education. But then it
Yeah.
also talked about unions and the importance of unionizing these charter schools.
Mhm.
And in fact, most people almost passed on probably unanimous or close to it. But one person had a
Mhm.
question, I remember, and
Yeah.
you spoke out very forcefully on
Mhm.
this issue. Could you talk a little bit about charter schools and how you see that they fit into public education and the role of unions in trying to in education and in charter schools?
Absolutely. So, public education, I love public education, near and dear to my heart. I'll always support and stand for public education for our students, for our schools, for our teachers, and other stakeholders as well. There are different chapters and affiliates of the National Alliance across the entire country. You have some chapters and affiliates where charter schools are not an issue yet, right? There are not any charters in their city, there's not any charters in their states, but then you have chapters and affiliates like New Orleans. New Orleans is a chapter and affiliate where all of their charters, and I believe this happened after Katrina, and New Orleans, all of their schools are charter schools, right? In Jacksonville and in Florida, a lot of our schools, not all of them yet, are becoming charters. We have so many charters popping up. In Jacksonville, there's an issue right now about charters wanting to share space with quote unquote, underutilized, underfunded public schools without having to contribute, right? We had a universal education bill that defunded public schools by $1 billion. So charters are the reality in some of our cities and some of our states. So instead of being delusional and being like, you know what, we need to shutter all of these schools, we need to get rid of these teachers, we're like, no, these teachers are underpaid and overworked. We need to unionize these charters and put the power back in the hands of the workers, the students, and the parents, not the charters that are trying to make as much money as they can and gut the public school system. So that's something, and the reason that I spoke out against it, right, is because in my city, charters are a reality. And in New Orleans, charters are a reality. In Philadelphia, charters are a reality. We still love public education. We will still fight tooth and nail for public education. But the way we're going to approach these charter schools is to unionize them, is to get a fair contract for the workers, and to make sure that we're also supporting public education in the same vein.
Yeah, no, it's when I heard the resolution and when I heard you speak, I
Yeah.
was full, I was very much I was very happy.
Yeah.
I was very much in support of what the resolution and what you had to say.
Mhm.
And it's it goes back to the Clinton days, and the neoliberal policies were both political parties in the United States, and this privatizing, actually privatizing goes back to Carter, Reagan, even probably before that. But
Mhm.
in education, more Clinton, Bush, et cetera. And
Yeah.
um, the what they do is I'm in a little bit of a rant here maybe, but what they it's like a lot of things that are public. The public has access to. There's some transparency and some scrutiny, not enough probably, but there's some. And if
Mhm.
you privatize these schools, there's none,
Yeah.
and they can do all kinds of really terrible things.
Yeah.
And usually the first thing they do is make sure that they're all non-union, and so that there's so the union is another way of fighting for democracy and having some say. And so often the only voice parents have in their children's education in a charter school is through the union if there's one
Yeah.
there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know here in Chicago, we've been successful at, first unionizing a large number of charter schools. The first charter school strikes in the country were here. And as you brought wages and benefits and demanded services for the students that
Yeah.
looked like the public schools, there was less interest, and many charter schools even started closing down.
Mhm.
And it was
Yeah.
like, say, oh, well, we're all for the kids, but if we're not making a lot of money, we're not for them anymore.
Yep.
And our union, which I give credit to, they put in their collective bargaining agreement that there couldn't be charter school growth. So all this stuff has been, the labor movement and this anti-privatization of coming together.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you though, so how is this an alliance issue though?
Yeah, it goes back to the National Alliance strategy of building a broad, united front against the Trump administration. The Trump administration has two people, has had at least two people that are privatization hawks. They want to privatize every single public school, gut the public school unions as well, and they're trying to do it on a regular basis. They call it, we're going to give the parents choice. No, you're going to line the pockets of your billionaire buddies, right? So again, this goes back, the charter school resolution specifically goes back to the Unite and Fight, Build a Broad Front against the Trump administration. The Trump administration is attacking public schools. The Trump administration is attacking public school unions. So we need to join with public school teachers. We need to join forces and unionize these charters to fight back against the Trump administration. That's why it's a national alliance issue. We're building that broad front against the Trump administration. We're building that broad front with people who are directly impacted, and he's attacking our schools, and we're going to fight back.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Let me ask you about what. So the National Alliance. There's lots of resolutions passed. They elected new leadership. I think the leadership met after the conference was over. So what are the plans for the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression for 2026? What can we look for in the next year?
Absolutely. So we meet every other month as a board, just the different board members, as well as the national board. And we will be having an organizing conference next year. So last year we had an organizing conference in Jacksonville, Florida. It was the Southern Regional Organizing Conference, or SROC, for short. This year we're going to be having, or next year we are going to be having another Southern Regional. Well, it might not be Southern Regional actually. So next year we will be having another regional organizing conference, and the location is to be determined.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then let me then ask you also. So if I was active in some group in this country, and I wanted our group to affiliate with the National Alliance Against Racist or Political Repression, or if I'm just listening to this and I think, oh, I want to get off my butt and do something, how do I find the National Alliance, or how do I get guidance and starting to get involved in the things? How do I become a Monique Sampson?
If you want to fight back against the Trump agenda, if you want to fight for justice and liberation, please email us, find us on NAARPR.org. We will get back to you. We will put you in touch with resources. Joining the National Alliance helps you, one, get guidance, two, be part of a fighting organization. We have national days of action multiple times in the year. We get together and we talk about things that are happening in our city. We ask questions on how we can get better, how we can do better, what the conditions are like. So you never feel alone. But if you're wanting to join and become a member of the baddest, mass defense organization in the country, find us on NAARPR.org.
How do you spell NAARPR.org?
NAARPR.org.
Okay, sounds good. So we're winding down here a little bit. Is there anything else that happened at the convention that you want to bring up, or anything else in general that we haven't covered here that you think is important that you want to raise?
No, you covered everything. You were very, very thorough.
Okay. Well, thank you for being our guest on Fight Back Radio, Monique. I really appreciate it. And it was a absolutely fabulous convention. And I congratulate you on the success of a good convention, and look forward to many successes for the Alliance in the coming year.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and all power to the people.
All power to the people. Yeah, Monique Sampson. If we only could have a few more Monique Sampsons, the world, I think, would be a lot better place. Just enormous amounts of energy and fight and courage, and a leader, the treasurer of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And I know at the end she gave the website and all that if people want to get involved with the Alliance or have their organizations affiliate. We'll put that in the show notes as well, so you can find it. You can scroll down and find it there. But there's been lots of stuff going on. I mean, the Alliance Conference was such an inspiration. I mean, for me anyways, and I think for everyone there. It was just very high energy for 3 days in a row of people who wanted to fight back against Trump, who wanted to fight for a just world. It was just so impressive. And a week earlier, I and many others were at the Teamsters for Democratic Union Convention here in Chicago as well. And that was exciting. I mean, there was just discussion, debate, learning, workshops, the same as the National Alliance in that sense. And people are skilling up and getting ready to fight back. They're knowing their rights. We're doing rapid responses to fight ICE and immigration. Looks like ICE is leaving Chicago until the springtime. I don't know what that's all about, but I'll tell you one thing. It's because we've been pushing back and kicking their butt. And we've got some good rulings from judges. I don't know if they'll stand up or how that's going to work out, but I don't think any of that happens without the fight back that has been going on in the streets. And so I'm very proud to be a member of the Chicago Teachers Union. I'm proud to be a resident of Chicago that's pushing back against Trump and all these things. Another thing I just want to call people's attention to is our last guest before Monique was Tom Burke, who talked about Venezuela, Colombia, and that region. And Trump continues to threaten to invade over there. I know there's been protests around the country. I encourage people to participate in those. The Anti-War Action Network, I know, has done some of this, and the Students for Democratic Society, others. So, my hat's off to all those folks who are trying to save lives, both American lives and lives abroad, to fight U.S.'s imperial designs and hopefully spend some of that money on education or things that it should go to. So I want to encourage people to do those things. Also, I just want to take note, this episode might be being released a couple of days late because our editors and myself, we were all at the National Alliance Conference, so we weren't able to do the work on Fight Back Radio. But here it is, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you were at the conference, or even if you weren't and you liked the episode, give it to someone else. You can educate them a little bit about the National Alliance, introduce them to Monique Sampson. So these are things I encourage people to do. Certainly, if you can, anything you can do on social media to help push us out there is always appreciated. And then finally, I know our sleep-deprived production team, I want to thank them for all their hard work. Caetano Silvera, Shane Tremley, Dodd McColgan, and Lane Dorsey. And I'm Richard Berg for the entire Fight Back Radio team, saying until next time, all power to the people.